The financial district is quiet by 6 p.m. Most of the corporate workers had left by 3 p.m. to beat the unbeatable traffic, only to be stuck, once again, weaving through urban side streets before emerging on the highway, which afforded enough freedom of their attention to finally turn on their favorite podcast, while bumper to bumper with like-minded podcast fans. The dealer walks down the bare sidewalk, lit by the towering glass skyscrapers above. He's dressed in a clean black rain jacket and athletic-fitting jeans. Someone walking down the street in this particular area would not find him out of place, perhaps only slightly, with shaggy hair and rough facial stubble, but not a drug dealer. Jacob looks down from the 58th floor at the bare, cold streets, thinking his guy should be here shortly. The floor's lights are almost entirely off, except for his department's lights, which he will be responsible for turning off. The HVAC system rumbles on and off throughout the large open space. He can feel the cold from the floor-to-ceiling windows as he looks down at the street. The cleaning crews have started to come around. It is slightly weird that he is still here, given his work habits and demographic, but only slightly. Some older workers that are more career-driven would stay late if they were on a tight deadline. But at this moment, he just wanted to get high. He wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for the guy he is waiting for, providing his shit only on his terms. And these were the terms. The stuff would be dropped off inside of a coffee cup in the first garbage can past the intersection on the southeast side of King and Bay. This is the situation, and he could not argue it, lest he risk ever procuring this stuff again. And it is seriously good shit. Every time he smoked this shit, he felt like tropical paradise, gooey dough on a sunny beach. Everything melted away, leaving only the good stuff. And on this Halloween Eve, he needed that shit. This is too good of an experience to not be had high, blazed, baked, absolutely choo-choo trained out of his mind. He and his friends are going to an old asylum that had been abandoned for years but was recently bought by a group of ex-Imagineers who had restored it and turned it into an absolutely world-class attraction. Last year a boy had had to be stretchered out as he had become frozen in fear at the sight of a hanging patient. He had to be high as shit for this. It is 6:30 and Jacob takes the elevator down, which once at floor 50 skips entirely to the ground floor as there is another bay of elevators for 1 to 50. In the lobby he approaches a cleaning lady. "Hi, I work here. I just need to go outside for a second, and then come back in. The key card won't work after 6 p.m., but you can just open the door for me? You'll remember me. I look just like this." Jacob points to his face anxiously, smiling, hoping for a yes. "I'll only be a few seconds, okay?" The lady nods inexpressively and continues mopping. Jacob steps out of the open lobby and into the street. He fishes through the garbage and grabs a coffee cup, peeks inside, and heads back in. He is only slightly worried that these actions will be captured on camera by his superiors. The inexpressive cleaning lady lets him back in. He's extremely grateful for this because he did not want to have to roll a joint outside, or on the way. The last time he had attempted to roll a joint outside, he spilled all of the ground weed from the rolling paper and it had dispersed in the wind, never to be smoked. This had ruined his whole day and any attempt at a possible high. He heads back up to the 58th to roll a joint in a bathroom stall. The ceramic floor is glistening in the overlit bathroom, the corporate scent of a skyscraper's indoor air soon to be overridden by the smell of freshly ground bud. There was some worry that residue may be found by his peers the next day, but he had previously found cocaine on the backs of these toilets, after all. He grinds the weed onto a sheet of printer paper and cautiously loads it into the canoe-shaped rolling paper. Licking the edge of the paper, he can taste the beginning of his adventure. Jacob stashes the freshly rolled joint in the right pocket of his dress pants, grabs his bag from his desk containing his night's costume, and heads back down. It is around 7 p.m. and his 4 friends roll up outside of his office building in Jackson's Subaru Outback. They are dressed in their costumes already. Jackson and Maddie are up front. Brian and Kenny are in the back. Jacob hops in the back next to 2 zombies. "Fellas," he says as he buckles in. And Maddie. "Hey Jacob," she says cheerfully and bubbly, as always. Jacob now learns that Brian and Kenny have begun their acid trip, but aren't quite feeling it yet. Nevertheless, the silence within the back of the car persists. They begin their drive to the haunted entertainment asylum. Jacob's window is open as they roll through the downtown, costumed people beginning to emerge on the streets. As they approach the end of the hour drive north of the city, Jacob reaches into his pocket to pull out the joint and lights it carefully. Jacob is smoking his good shit joint in hopes that it plays on his team today. His relationship with weed walks the line between crippling anxiety and pure bliss. All passengers in the car know this. He will either have an experience in the pure present moment, Nothing but vibrant, positive, unfiltered and raw sensation, or pure terror of everything, in a fight to sort out reality, not realizing that the fight is making the fight harder, that he is too deep in the fight to realize he is tripping, too deep to realize that his mind is the fight. He's stuck in his head. But no one in this car will stop him from engaging. He will not stop himself, but push forward. He hopes for the day when getting high will be enjoyable again, though he has recently been on a losing streak. Every next high is a chance to win the fight. He just needs to keep trying and have faith. He does have general anxiety, and knows to stay clear away from hard psychedelics like the Israeli acid that sent him to another dimension, and which he's sure he never fully came back from and is a part of the recovery journey he is on at this very moment. Brian and Kenny are fully enjoying the Israeli acid and have never had a problem. Jackson and Maddie prefer the more organic affair of magic mushrooms. Driving through the empty, rolling countryside north of the city, Google Maps guides them to a gated driveway on the right. The North York Asylum stands on open grounds. Some trees line the driveway and the gardens around the building. The building is 3 stories tall and looks to be about as long as a football field. Spotlights illuminate the front facade of the building. The asylum sits on over 500 acres, established as the 4th asylum for the insane in Canada in 1880. At its peak, it housed over 1,000 patients with 200 staff. The asylum was established by a prominent asylum caretaker and author, known for his innovative treatments for the mentally ill. Throughout its history, the asylum was entirely self-sufficient, served by a farm with cattle, chickens, and pigs, as well as fruits and vegetables. The Subaru Outback approaches the building and pulls into the gravel parking lot. A line of costumed people stretches along the side of the building as haunting instrumental music emanates from the property. Jacob changes beside the car, out of his dress clothes, which had overstayed their welcome by this point in the day, and into his alien costume. The October night has gotten colder, the steam from car exhausts and breath now visible in the air. Jackson and Maddie huddle around a plastic bag and grab themselves a handful each of mushrooms. Brian and Kenny pan themselves like aliens, examining their new landscape. Brian bursts out laughing. Jacob is doing okay so far. The cold is keeping him sober, and it has not been long since he'd finished his joint. Shrek, Fiona, 2 zombies, and an alien make their way to the line into the asylum. Jacob is cold in the thin cloth of his costume and wants to get inside. The 5 friends manage to keep their wits about them in line, circling together to shield themselves from any startling interactions. They enter after Jackson scans their 5 passes on his phone. They begin by making their way to the 3rd floor. It is free roam for all guests throughout the building. It is very dark and only dimly lit by candlelight. The interior has been left in a state of decay, but cleaned and refurbished to eliminate any environmental hazards. Sounds of unknown origin reverberate from unknown sources against the stone walls, through rooms and corridors with high ceilings. Jackson and Maddie are bravely leading the way as the zombies and alien trail behind. They all stick fairly close together. Jacob is enjoying the experience and is currently engulfed in the nostalgia of such an institution that this asylum once was. Asylum staff and nurses in old-timey costumes are dotted throughout the building, with creepy patients lurking about, trying to provide a scare. The 3rd floor contains the old living quarters, the 2nd floor contains patient care rooms, and the 1st floor patient services, including a cafeteria, and the basement contains the utility tunnels. There is also a gym, theater, and church on site. As they walk along the 3rd floor's living quarters, they see various patients acting insane within their rooms. The figure of one lady is sitting dead still in a chair in the middle of her room, staring toward the window in near darkness. "Let's go in," Maddie says, tugging at Jackson. Jackson and Maddie look back at the others. At this point, they're all in, and if they're going to experience this fully, they'll all have to enter at least one room. No one wants to lead the way around the woman to the window side of the room. The woman must know they're there by now. Jackson pulls out his phone flashlight and shuffles along the right wall. The rest follow behind. Jacob is flooding with anticipation. The woman is unkempt and dressed in a gown. She has not budged. Jackson has made his way around to her front side, and her gaze stays dead fixed, not acknowledging their presence at all. They're expecting a jump scare, and all lose their shit when a sound clangs from down the hallway. They all bolt from the room without the woman ever having moved. After that rush, Jacob can feel the weed setting in. Back in the hallway, the group is navigating through the rest of the 3rd floor. Brian is laughing about the whole experience and almost every single thing he sees. Jacob has never seen him have a bad trip. Kenny tends to get very deep with his trips, very internal, but not disturbed. He is feeling the walls and mumbling about the architectural elements and histories of such asylums. Jackson is very grounded, and though his senses may get psychedelic, He is one to be aware of any deviations of his senses and return to ground, sticking only to what he can control and going with the flow with all else. Maddie is hard to read when she is under the influence. She gets quieter, but otherwise seems normal and entirely herself. At the moment, her eyes only seem a bit more wide-eyed and alert than usual. Jacob starts to think if his alien mask is getting too hot and making it hard to breathe. He has been thinking about the last room since leaving, wondering how many other interactions there might be and what form they might take. The potential reality of the experience is starting to set in for him. Jacob pops into the washroom to freshen up and take a breather as the rest mingle in the hallway. A nurse chases a patient that is screaming and running down the hallway. Other guests dart out of the way and shriek as he passes. In the washroom, it is darker than in the hallway. Jacob was hoping that it would be a fully lit safe haven for him to gather himself. He is praying to God the experience doesn't continue in here. He bursts open a stall door and securely locks it to use a toilet in privacy. He is lighting his space with his phone flashlight. A low groaning voice starts echoing through the washroom. He should have scanned the washroom before committing to this. He can't leave the stall now. He is frozen with fear. He thinks his heart may have stopped. He checks his pulse. It's still there. The person is now banging on the stall doors. "Hello? Is this part of the experience?" Jacob calls out pitifully. "I'm really not feeling well." He has finished using the toilet, but continues waiting in silence. The banging continues. This is a relentless fucking experience. After 10 minutes, Brian calls into the washroom to check on him, laughing. Jacob seizes the opportunity to dart from the stall and sprints out of the washroom. The group decide to split up, and the two zombies head to the basement of the building, which Jacob decides he is not up for, and follows Jackson and Maddie to the second floor. As they are walking along the second floor, a patient thrashes about in a padded room and bangs at the door. Another patient is being wheeled in a straitjacket into a surgery room. Jacob is now fully engulfed in the experience. There is no other world but this asylum. The weed is hit, and he is extremely high. He thinks that it's peaking. The three follow the straitjacketed man. The room is brightly lit, with a large lamp overhanging a raised metal table in the center. Jacob is feeling disconnected. He cannot feel his body. He does not know what he's doing. He feels stunned by the bright lights of this room. Shrek, Fiona, and an alien stand around the room among other guests as the patient thrashes in the restraints, biting at a gag as they begin to perform a lobotomy. A two-pronged device recedes into the eyes of the patient. Jacob wonders whether the actors like working here. He can only see them as actors now. Do they know he's high, he thinks? Have some of them reacted and treated him differently because they know he's high? The dread of losing his mind begins to set in. The fear of losing complete control to an infinite cycle of unbearable thoughts going full throttle, without respite, just like the patient on the table in front of them. Jacob decides he has to leave the room. He tells Jackson and Maddie and enters back into the dark hallways. He takes a few deep breaths. He walks toward the entrance, trying to regain his grip on reality. He tries to focus on certain visual stimuli, or anything that will connect him back to reality, but nothing sticks. He tries to tell himself it's all in his head. Of all his mind is being bombarded with, he cannot determine what is real. Everything he is sensing seems to be filtered through his very skewed lens. What is everyone else here thinking? What are Jackson and Maddie, Brian and Kenny thinking? How do they see the world? Do the people here know he's not processing the world correctly? He stumbles out of the front entrance onto the lawn. He doesn't know what time it is. The air is very cold. Many guests are still lined around the building, including some scantily clad women who are huddling together for warmth. Jacob rips his mask off. He tries paying attention to the sounds of nature, the crickets. He tries breathing the fresh air, tries looking at the floodlit trees in the dark night, tries looking at the moonlit clouds. But it is just him trying to do these things, trying to override his mind because of fear, and it is not working. "Fuck," he says under his breath, and he throws up into a set of bushes near the parking lot. He is now shaking sickly. He goes to the Subaru Outback and realizes he doesn't have the keys. He can't bring himself to go back in to get the keys from Jackson, and is too embarrassed to call him. And ultimately, he doesn't think he can hack waiting out this high in the Subaru Outback, and until his friends are ready to go home. He wants to be alone, and wants to go home now. Luckily, a stream of cabs has been dropping off guests regularly. Jacob hops in the next cab available. "Back downtown, please," he says. The cab rolls down the gravel driveway away from the asylum and onto the country roads. Jacob is silent. He stares out the window as the heating wafts through the cab. The pine air freshener and fabric interior settle him in the familiar cab environment. He needs to get himself together now, or he may never get himself together. Can the cab driver tell? Does he think he should get help? Go to the hospital?